Well, hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. We are actually not at Red Tool House, we are at our camp, which I still got to name this sucker, but it's about 3.5 hours away, the way I drive, full of stuff. It is 2,700 feet above elevation. We've documented in some of our other videos, but this is our off-grid camp build that we're doing. And so you see behind us here, the work we did today, we decided, I took a day off from the office, we got in the truck early this morning, drove up here with our supplies. The game plan was to get our posts set in the ground with concrete reinforcement, so to be nice and cured and solid before the holiday weekend comes up, and we can come up here and do the rest of our build. So again, you may be wondering, what are we building here? Is this some sort of tiki pit where we'll put heads on poles? No, this is actually the foundation of what we're calling our Johnny house, or our vermicomposting toilet. So we'll detail it here. So in our last video where I showed the using the SketchUp software as to how we use it to design things, then that's what we used, that's what I'm going off of here, is this design. So you see a lot of poles really close together, but the whole point of that is I wanted something very sturdy. I'll get it on the other side. Something very sturdy, and it needed to have elevation. So let's go over here behind our tank. I think this will give us the best idea of elevation. Okay, so here's our IBC tote. So this is a run-of-the-mill IBC tote, and we have recessed it in the ground. We haven't buried it. And if you look at the details on vermicomposting, you don't bury it, you set it on the ground. We're going to recess a little bit because we needed some elevation drop. So the concept with vermicomposting, and I'm going to link to a website below in the video description, where you can see there's been a lot of study, a lot of research done on this, a lot of testing done on vermicomposting toilets. So the concept is you have a tank, and they recommend IBC tote just because they're so easy to come by. So you have a tank, and this tank as an outlet that would be kind of like a septic tank, where it would go out into a very small drain field, unlike a septic tank. Septic tank obviously would use a huge drain field. But the outlet is at the bottom, whereas a septic tank, the outlet would be at the top, and you'd have just your top water coming off with your solid settling. This works differently. Instead of the tank being full of liquid and being full of your waste, you actually open up this panel here. You cut a hole in the top of this IBC tote to make a panel. You fill this 3/4 full of wood chips, maybe with a little gravel base underneath, just so things can filter through. And you'd have your sewage coming in through the top. So the thing we like about this is it's going to allow us to have a real flushing toilet in our Johnny house. And that helps when we have friends that come up and people that aren't accustomed to going to an old school outhouse or composting bucket, you know. Pooping in a bucket, some people just don't think that's very romantic. So we're going to be able to use a real flushing toilet. We're going to do rain catchment off the roof that will feed our toilet tank, so it'll fill that up, allow somebody to flush. So obviously all their waste, toilet paper and all, comes into this tank. and it lands on top of that layer of carbon. All that wood chip carbon is in there. And so what happens is, of course, the solids stay on top. The liquid and the urea kind of filter down through. And of course, the nitrogen in all your urine and those things is really reacting well with that, all those wood chips. And it filters through, and there's a small amount of, if you've got it built right, there's a small amount of gray water that comes out into another carbon bed that you do. So we'd actually dig out a little area here, fill that full of wood chips, have a perforated pipe that comes out, and it actually fills into this drain field with all that carbon, and of course, again, takes the last little bit of nitrogen out. And what they recommend to make sure you're not dumping any hot water, black water into the soil, is plant nitrogen-loving plants around them. If they don't do too well, then you don't have too much nitrogen coming in. If they're flourishing and you get crazy big plants, then hey, I'm a little too black with my gray water there. But the key ingredient, the magic that makes all this happen, of course, and why it's called vermicomposting, is you add worms. So they recommend red wigglers, and of course the red wigglers are going to be kicking it in here. Well, you can get them started with some food scraps and those type of things, but once you get some stasis built there, they will be consuming your waste. They'll be eating the toilet paper, be eating your fecal material, they'll be just kicking all that stuff, eating it up. And over time, this will actually start to turn into compost. Human manure will compost down with all that carbon in it. And again, I'm not going to spout numbers and things, but if you look at this website, it goes through all those details. Again, it shows designs, how they build it. It talks about specific case studies they have in different parts of the world. And I believe in Spain, if I remember correctly, Spain or Portugal, they actually have the local municipalities that are signing off on this and saying, do this instead of septic tanks, because it's much more green, it's much more user-friendly, and has a lot less inputs. Probably not less inputs. Inputs are going to be the same, but it has a lot less maintenance associated with it. I believe the one lady that's had hers for over 20 years, all she has done is add just a little bit more wood chips here and there. She's never even had to scoop it out, and she's one person on daily use. Here at camp, we're going to be short use, maybe a week at most if we come up, and it could be 4, 6, or it could even be as many as 20 people here. So we may tax the system heavy over the course of a week, but then may be gone for a month or two. So we're going to see how that works out, where you have these spikes. Again, they've got a forum on the website reading how do people handle ups and downs, and they say, well, you can still do that. You just have to feed your worms before you leave. You don't want them to starve. So obviously the main concern for your worms is giving them food. So having the human waste into the tank, if you need to get them charged, then and provide nutrients for them, then even food scraps, some of those things you can throw in there, cardboard, anything that you would associate with standard vermicomposting to give the worms the nutrients. But the other two key pieces of environment that the worms need, they obviously need a consistent temperature, or a temperature in a certain range, and they need darkness. So you can see this tote here, even though we're under the shade of our canopy, still gets a lot of sunlight on it. And we're at 2,700 feet, so winters can be a little brisk up here. So what we'll do is I'll come back and I'll set some posts out from this tank, probably a foot, maybe a foot and a half, put some sacrificial boards around it, and then probably just backfill it with wood chips. So get a nice insulation barrier there, of course, provided the darkness, and our tank will have the inlet from the toilet will come right down here into a 90. So we'll have a lid above that. So this sidewall here will have a pipe coming in 90 degree down into the tank. So I'll have a lid that goes over top of this, because at times I'll want to remove this roof or this lid to be able to service this or to check it. Again, since we're going to be gone months at a time, I may have to crack this open, put a bunch of food scraps in it, and close it off. And of course, having the lid help with the aesthetics. They claim there's zero odor with this if it's done right and it's balanced right, but having that lid or having that roof on it is going to help obviously keep that down as well. So you got to give them food, you got to keep them out of the light, and then of course temperature. With the red wigglers, it's ideal to be, I believe it's between like 45 degrees and 85 degrees. So that's kind of the temperature you want to keep. So of course in the dead of winter up here, that's going to be a little tough to do. I'm not worried about the 85 degrees. We could do that all day long. We'll never hit that once I've got this insulated. But I think with the wood chips, with the roof on it, with enough insulation, and that's why I recessed this tank. Again, I didn't bury it because IBC totes can't handle being buried very well. So I recessed it a bit. It's probably a third of the way buried. So I'm hoping there's enough thermal battery from the ground there with the wood chips around it and the roof on it in the wintertime that it can keep. I'm hoping it'll stay about 50 degrees, 55 degrees. We'll see. Another thing the worms will do, of course, they are smart enough when it gets cold, they're hanging out on the surface, they'll go down to the bottom and go dormant. So that's the thing. If I was coming up here in the winter and using the tank a lot, then that's where the temperature would be much more critical to keep them on the higher end of that temperature, so they're still up here doing their job in the dead of winter, eating and getting big fat and breeding a bunch of other worm friends. So we'll see how that goes. Now, I'm not planning to come up here much in the winter. I'd love to. I'd love to spend all winter up here, but things at the farm obviously will keep me busy and other stuff. So we're gonna continue to document this as we go along. Did you get it all done? Cool. Kelly and Cam, actually Cam did most of it. Cam put a nice oil finish on our deck over here. So we can, this is poplar that we milled for our deck, that we put our tent on, and eventually will be our porch to our cabin, back porch probably. So nice coating of oil there to cure it and keep it from rotting out so much and make it look sexy. That looks fancy. That's like something you'd pay a professional to do. Okay, so these posts seem a little excessive. I bought 8-footers and I wasn't quite sure what my elevation was going to be. I wanted to be able to measure this, get my drain pipe. Obviously I want enough relief coming out of the base of the toilet that it runs into the tank. So I just went ahead and set all 8-footers in concrete. We have varying heights here. Now that I can get my elevation established, so I'll probably be, the floor of our toilet room will probably be about as high to my waist here at this pole. Obviously further back it'll be a little higher. So you can imagine I'm going to cut these 6 4x6s all flush, and then there'll be a sheet of 4x8 plywood that sits there, so that'll be the floor. So along that, and I'll share the drawing again I shared in our previous video. So this will be, this small rectangle will be a 4x8 sheet of plywood. It'll be framed out, door here, with a roof sloping back, single angle roof, with gutter that's going to catch rainwater. And what we'll most likely do is have a 55-gallon drum turned on its side here so the rainwater comes off. Again, if the floor is this high, you can imagine we're going to have a 7-foot ceiling in there, so it's going to be much higher than this. So we can have that tank suspended here on its side like I have on our chicken coop at home. Rainwater coming into the gutter, piped into the 55-gallon drum, gravity fed down to the, if the toilet sits right here, imagine if I was backing up to the toilet, it'd be right here, but obviously this much higher. Then the tank, put the tank elevation about right here, so we'll be able to gravity feed into the tank, so it'll fill up the water in the tank. Of course, flushing, drain, bang, right into our IBC tote. So we'll cut these off to be flush with the ground, and then, or flush with our flooring, and stud these up. Now these smaller 4x4s here in the front, you can imagine is now an L shape that goes around our 4x8 Johnny house. So you'll come up the stairs here. So if I was standing, there'll be stairs coming up to again about that elevation. Be some deck boards that come down to make an L shape. Turn here, and this will be a little privacy area. Well, we'll have a shower head. So we'll have an outdoor shower here. And again, in that situation, we won't feed from the 55-gallon tote because that'll be ambient temperature. Nobody's man enough to do that, are we? Kelly is. You man enough? No. So we'll have a different system to incorporate obviously warm water. But I have a shower head up here, just some deck boards, and we'll catch the water and probably just gray water that over into our same drain field there. So it'd be a nice little privacy area here. This is the back corner. You can see over my shoulder. The mountain really just kind of drops up over the hill, so we don't have too much to worry about there as far as visibility goes. The county road's behind Liam, our cameraman. So this will be nice, secure, tucked away. We're under the shade of this nice hemlock and a couple oaks, So kind of a neat area. I mean, obviously under the trees we'll have to keep the gutters clean, but I think this is a nice private area. It kind of tucks away in this little area there. So really excited to get working on this. And our plan is to come up, actually the day that you're seeing this video, if I get my schedule right, we may already be up here starting to build this structure. So we'll obviously document that and share all that as we go along. Okay, so we're back from camp now and actually ready to go back up and start building. So we're going to detail that in some future videos. But I want to take this opportunity to let you know, those of you that are interested, our Pastured Pig podcast is now live. So we got our first episode on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play and all those guys. So I'll link to it below in the video description if you want to check that out. If you like what we do when we talk about pigs, then you can check it out there. All right, take care, everybody.